Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Monday, November 3rd, 2025. Kyle Anzalone joins us now. Kyle, it's a pleasure, my dear friend. Thank you for, pardon me, for taking the time to join us. Can any argument be made by the Trump administration that the country of Venezuela, not human beings that were born there, but the country, the state, the government, is a threat to the national security of the United States?
Well, first off, Judge, just thank you for having me back on. I always appreciate an opportunity to talk to you and your amazing audience. And absolutely not. There is no threat posed by Venezuela to the United States of America. There were, some Venezuelan citizens who are inside the United States and members of gangs, and they caused some problems for American citizens. But of course, that problem was easily solved by the United States having any border enforcement whatsoever. By Joe Biden having a very loose immigration policy, people got into the United States who should, and they were coming from all countries. President Donald Trump will even say this. There's a lot of people even from as far as Africa coming to the United States illegally engaging in criminal activity. So this isn't some unique threat posed by Venezuela. And the country of Venezuela poses no threat to the United States whatsoever. Trump will talk about drug smuggling to the United States, but Venezuela makes up a very, very small portion of the drugs coming into the United States. I think it was a UN study that found it was just 7% of the drugs entering the United States comes from Venezuela. But most importantly, the drugs coming from Venezuela are cocaine, it's not heroin, and it's not laced with fentanyl. That is, Chinese precursors being made by Mexican cartels. And so this cocaine coming from Venezuela, the small amount that does make it to the United States, it's just keeping the Miami nightclubs open late. It's not actually fueling the massive drug crisis that's killing tens or hundreds of thousands of Americans.
Well, I like that, keeping the Miami nightclubs up late. I always add, because of my libertarian heart, and I know you appreciate this, Trump wants to kill people that are delivering drugs to their willing American buyers. Nobody's forcing these people to take cocaine. Trump doesn't seem to understand it. What about this nonsense that Venezuela has opened up its prisons and insane asylums? This is so hyperbolic, and he repeated it as recently as yesterday.
Yeah, he was saying on 60 Minutes that they sent people straight from the insane asylums in Venezuela to the United States of America. No explanation on how these people got through Central America and Mexico to the United States. And he doesn't mention that the reason there's any migration crisis from Venezuela to the United States at all is in large part due to the economic sanctions on Venezuela that we have imposed that were, they've been ratcheting them up for years, but really, really strengthened during Trump's first administration. And of course, the government of Venezuela is communist and their central planning doesn't run an effective state. But still, they have minimal assistance for poor people in the country. They have massive economic resources, oil reserves, gold, other minerals. So they could feed, clothe their population and keep them within their own country if it wasn't for the U.S. sanctions that lead to power plants having blackouts because the power plant was built by Siemens, a German company. And when the U.S. imposed the sanctions, Venezuela was unable to buy replacement parts, or they were unable to contract with the refineries in the United States that are actually able to process the Venezuelan crude oil, and they had trouble pumping and selling their crude oil on the open market because of that.
When did the sanctions start? Is this under Trump 1 or under Obama?
Obama had some sanctions on Venezuela, but Trump really strengthened him during, really the latter half of his administration when he had brought Elliot Abrams and John Bolton, and they had his ear. Remember, he had that big meeting in, I believe, Lima, Peru, and John Bolton was a part of it. And this was the Lima group. They were meeting to orchestrate the regime change against Maduro during Trump's first administration. And Bolton walked out of the meeting with 5,000 soldiers in Colombia, meant on his scribbled on his notepad. And this was meant to be a threat to Maduro and try to signal and push Trump to go engage in a regime change in Venezuela during his first administration. So they put these sanctions on Venezuela that were intended to cripple the Venezuelan economy, and they did have some significant impacts. The Center for Economic Policy Research put out a study, I believe this was in like 2019 or 2020, that tens of thousands of Venezuelans had died in part because of the U.S. sanctions.
Tens of thousands of Venezuelans dead because of U.S. Sanctions. And Trump claims that the head of the state, who according to Professor Rodriguez was not actually elected, but he is the head of the state, is responsible for delivering drugs into the United States and responsible for putting drugs or causing them to be put on the speedboats that Trump is destroying on the high seas.
Yeah, so Judge, one thing I'll say is maybe the only thing I disagreed with what Professor Rodriguez said is the studies that say Maduro wasn't legitimately elected have come out of the Carter Center, which is funded by the U.S. State Department. And so, you know, there may be some unfair influence or marginalization of the opposition in Venezuela by Maduro, but I don't necessarily believe the claim that, at least as the vote tallies go, he didn't narrowly win the last election in Venezuela. When
you say Carter Center, you mean President Jimmy Carter?
Yes.
The Carter Center is funded by the U.S. State Department?
Yeah, it's one of their top funders.
Wow. Didn't know that at all. Is the Clinton Foundation funded by the State Department also?
I'm sure it was at one point.
Certainly when Mrs. Clinton was running the State Department.
Right.
How about Mrs. I don't know if she's married or not, and I'm not making a comment on that. Machado. Isn't it well established that she's a CIA asset and probably a Mossad asset as well?
Well, she certainly seems to be at least a tool of them and understands that she needs to toe the line when it comes to what the CIA wants, what the Washington establishment foreign policy wants, and just, you know, puffing up Donald Trump, saying that, you know, her Nobel Peace Prize really belongs to him, authorizing Trump's extrajudicial killings of her countrymen in international waters, completely illegal. And she's just authorizing that and signing off on, calling for military operations in Venezuela because she wants power. And so I don't know if she's an asset of the CIA or if she's just kind of working with them to get what they both want, which is Maduro out of power and her in.
Seems almost as though she's looking for this champion of peace is looking for violence in order to bring him out. Chris, number 13.
Do you get the feeling that the U.S. is about to bring about regime change? Is that what you have been told?
No, I've not been told that. This is not regime change. This is enforcing the will of the Venezuelan people.
Isn't the fact that to achieve the peaceful transition that you describe, you need the U.S. military. You need more of what is happening in the region off the coast of Venezuela, the drones, all of this kind of U.S. military pressure.
Well, I think that history has demonstrated that that's correct. We have gone and done everything that ought to be done. We have a united opposition forces. We have everything, and we are ready. We now need the international community aligned with the United States because this is a transnational conflict and operation. So certainly we need the international community to act.
So the winner of the Nobel Peace Prize is calling for an invasion of the country from which she came so that the president, who she says is illegitimate, can be deposed, and that she, who claims she won the election, can be imposed. Do I have this right?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And just, I guess, in the same fashion as Barack Obama, she wins the Nobel Peace Prize. She puts it on her neck and starts ordering the U.S. military to go to war. This is, absolutely crazy. And unfortunately, I'm very worried that we're about to start actually striking inside of Venezuela. The Miami Herald, which I'm guessing has some good sources right now, they do good coverage of, or at least insightful coverage of Latin America anyways, but also a large number of Trump administration officials that are in the inner circle. Trump himself, Marco Rubio, Pam Bondi, Susie Wiles are all from Florida. So it seems that kind of the Republican Florida faction is very strong and has a lot of influence.
And what
right
is the
now.
Miami Herald saying?
And they're saying that Trump has authorized strikes to begin inside Venezuela against military targets. And they're saying any day that could start.
Wow. Against military targets. It is inconceivable to me that the military of Venezuela poses a threat to anybody in the United States. Anybody.
They absolutely do not. There's no constitutional context whatsoever. I mean, at least in the past, presidents have pretended to stretch the 2001 authorization for use of military force, which was meant to go after Osama bin Laden in Afghanistan, to include terrorists everywhere. But this is just insane. And Pete Hegseth is calling the narco terrorist Al Qaeda, but that's way too far.
Going to switch gears a little bit, only because this is one of the worst, most absurd, self-indulgent, and supercilious presentations that the senior senator from South Carolina has ever put on. And I want you to watch it and tell me what you think. Now, this is Lindsey Graham before the Republican Jewish coalition. And we'll soon play one that's even worse than this, but this is Graham at his worst.
Speaking of Donald Trump, he said, hey, so he's a great president. If you don't believe me, just ask him. What happened with me and him was we found common ground. I've come to like him and he likes him, and that changed our entire relationship. But he did the Golan Heights thing. Remember, Ron? He said, I called him up where you at. I'm with BB on the Golan Heights. He said, I didn't know we were in New York. No, that's another Golan Heights. We're over there. He recognized the Golan Heights by tweet because he understood you can't give it back to Syria because they'll use it to kill you. He recognized Jerusalem as capital of Israel. Why? Because if you got a problem with that, take it up with God. He's the guy that did it, not Trump. So I just want to say, I feel good about the Republican Party. I feel good about where we're going as a nation. We're killing all the right people and we're cutting your taxes. Trump is my favorite president. We've run out of bombs. We didn't run out of bombs in World War II.
Killing all the right people, Christian nationalism. The God of the Old Testament declared that Benjamin Netanyahu should be the head of the Israeli government and Israel should have the land that it now has, and we're running out of bombs. Does this guy even know what the hell he's talking about?
Well, I mean, U.S. stockpiles on bombs may be low because we've sent so many over the past few years to Ukraine and Israel, and we're trying to fight a war against next Venezuela. There's a report today in NBC News that they're preparing to conduct drone strikes against cartels in Mexico. Trump is on a record pace for bombing of Somalia as well, threatening to go into Nigeria. I mean, this man wants to wage war all over the world. So we may actually not have enough bombs. The only person that celebrating that though is Lindsey Graham and his donors from the military industrial complex. I mean, if the U.S. really did need the bombs, it's not a good thing that we're out of them. We haven't effectively diminished any of these groups. The Ansar Allah, the Houthis still control Yemen despite a massive bombing campaign. They have no idea who they're killing in Latin America and the Caribbean. Even they've admitted they have no idea what these people's names are. Two of the people who actually survived the attack went to Ecuador and the government released them, fighting they were engaged in no wrongdoing. And so we're not killing all the right people. We're just killing. We're just dropping bombs. And Lindsey Graham lights it because he lights death, because that makes him and his wealthiest donors a lot more money.
Why is Marco Rubio so intent on removing Maduro from office?
It's a long-term policy of his. I think I don't think Rubio's a deep thinker himself. I'm sure that kind of that South Florida Republican dynamic where all of them believe in Latin America regime changes against, what were labeled communist governments, but now just governments that refuse to bend to the US's whims. And we want a regime change in Cuba and Venezuela and maybe Colombia. And that, so there's a lot of just that legacy, I think, that Marco Rubio comes from.
President Trump was asked if he's going to meet with Anzalone, the former ISIS leader who once had a $10 million bounty on his head put on by the State Department, who was posed smiling with severed heads in his hands, heads that he cut off from his political adversaries. Here's what he said when he was asked about, not about the severed heads, but about Anzalone coming to the White House yesterday on Air Force One.
Are you meeting with the Syrian president at the White House? Or did you invite him? The Syrian president? The Syrian president?
He may be coming. I don't know. I mean, he's working very hard. We took sanctions off of Syria to give them a chance at survival. And I hear he's doing a very good job. Let's see.
He's executing Alawites, Druids, Christians, females in public without any due process. Is that the good job of which the president speaks? There was certainly no semblance of democracy in the choice of him as the president of Syria. Now, was there, Mr. Rubio?
None whatsoever. His entitlement to president of Syria was that he was the leader of Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which is the off-growth of al-Qaeda in Syria, which he founded himself. And he was the leader of that. When they took over Damascus, he became president for that reason. And he's not some great man who's trying to usher in a new age for Syria and revolutionize the country, bring them democracy, rights, a good economy. He's appointed all of his old lieutenants, many of whom aren't Syrians. They're jihadists from Chechnya and all over the world that are now leading his defense ministry. And they're the ones that are going out and conducting these horrific ethnic cleansings, videoing people, making them crawl before engaging in large scale executions. Thousands of Alawites killed and many others driven into Lebanon, where that's the only place where they're safe now. And I do want to highlight here that this man fought against the United States in the Iraq War. He fought for Al-Qaeda during the Iraq War, the group that was killing thousands of young Americans with roadside bombs and suicide attacks and all kinds of other attacks. The reasons that thousands of Americans didn't come home and we are bogged down that country for so long. And he was a part of that organization, rose through the ranks, and it was the second in command of the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria before breaking off and forming the Al-Qaeda affiliate in Syria, which eventually won the Syrian civil war. This man has should be on the top of the United States kill list. If we were going to execute one person in the world with a drone strike, he is probably the most deserving. And yet he's being welcomed into the White House while we're bombing fishermen in the Caribbean.
You can't make this stuff up, Kyle. Who do you have on your show today? Who's this fellow Matt Wolfson?
Yeah, he's one of the great writers that we have at the Libertarian Institute, and he does some really good in-depth reporting on how the Israel lobby and the Zionist movement has infiltrated and influenced both the left and right of America. So I'm going to be talking about how they're kind of in the progressive movement and got involved in the New York City mayoral race, which I don't understand how that mayor race has anything to do with the state of Israel, and yet it became a major issue. And then also the infiltration of MAGA. So I'm really looking forward to this one.
Well, Zoran Mamdani, the candidate likely to win, who knows, there could always be an upset, has said that if Netanyahu lands at JFK, he'll be arrested and transported to the International Criminal Court. There are many of us who, of course, would cheer such an event.
Yeah, I know he said that, although I don't really count on politicians to follow through with those kind of great promises. My guess is that he's going to end up backing down and getting in line some, but certainly good that we have a politician in the United States making that claim. And he is likely to be the mayor of a major U.S. city here.
Yes, he is. Kyle, thank you very much. I know we put this together at the last minute and you have a busy day. Much appreciated. All the best to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Coming up tomorrow, Tuesday, a fairly regular Tuesday with the addition of Professor Sachs. So at 8 in the morning, Ambassador Chaz Freeman. At 11 in the morning, Scott Ritter. At 1 in the afternoon, Colonel Karen Kwiatkowski. At 2 in the afternoon, Matt Ho. At 3 in the afternoon, Professor Jeffrey Sachs. Judge Napolitano for Judging Freedom.